So on Tuesday, you had notes about succession and learned about succession. Succession is something you've been doing as you've gone through school. When you first went in as a little kindergartner, you were like the bare rocks. There was nothing there yet, supposedly. And then you went to the next stage, first grade. After you learned some more things, then you went to second grade. Then you went to third grade. Those were a natural progression or succession of stages that you go through. And when you first started school, you were in primary school. And now in high school, you find yourself in secondary school. And so just like your educational career has gone through predictable changes, that's what happens in an ecosystem also. You just did an investigation about the Arctic ice and how that's impacting an ecosystem. Well, when bad things happen to an ecosystem, for example, environmental changes do happen. Fire, deforestation, tornadoes, algal blooms, flooding, drought. Now, these environmental changes can be human-based, like deforestation and some fires, or it could be nature-based, like tornadoes or drought. And so what these environmental changes do is they impact an ecosystem. They impact the organisms living there. They impact both the biotic and the abiotic. So just like when you fall and cut your knee, you have a scab and there's a natural progression to healing. Succession can be thought of as the healing process. So when a fire happens and burns down to the bare level, or when man comes in and cuts down trees and clears out an area, or a farmer clears out a field to plant crops, such as could have happened here, nature wants to heal itself. And that healing process is very predictable, and it's a set of stages. Now, when I was going over and giving feedback on the projects that you did, your sequencing map, I noticed most of you missed this direction at the top of the page. So this is the thinking map that's displayed on the wall. But that doesn't mean in a sequence, there's only 3 boxes to do. You add on given your topic. And so that's why I wrote this was an example of a sequencing flow map. Add additional boxes for each stage of succession. So that's what I noticed. The non-examples, here's what people were doing. This is a common example of an incorrect submission. They kept the 3, and then they put primary succession, climax, and secondary succession. First of all, these are not the stages necessarily, because secondary succession can start anywhere. Primary and secondary overlap. There's only one difference, and that's the very first stage. So this actually is stage 1, where the lichen grow and break down rocks into soil and sand. Before this, primary succession starts with bare rock, no soil. After this part, secondary and primary are the same. Every stage is the same. Climax community is the goal. That's where it has reached, where an ecosystem has healed itself and has reached stability. So this was an incorrect example I saw. So if you set your sequencing of succession like this, please go back and correct it. Here's another way that I saw has multiple stages, and it's got those keywords. It has pioneer species. It has climax community. That's good. But what it is, it just says changes, new species. What new species? What types of plants? because there's a logical, just like you went from first grade to second grade to third grade, there's a progression about the types of plants. So you need to know those. So that's what this one's missing. So this one's better than the first one, but it still needs work on it. What type of plants? And the plants come first, and then the animals come next. So it's a series of stages of this specific plant, these types of animals. This specific plant, these types of animals, until it progresses to that climax community. So this is a better example, but still not there yet, because you need to know the types of plants. For example, some common questions. After events such as a fire or a tree fall in a forest, early successional species first to appear. What's an example of an early successional species? So the two previous non-examples I showed wouldn't be able to answer this because it didn't have examples. And you'll notice another question. Sometimes, luckily, they'll have maps and graphics for you to follow. Okay? And then it's not that you don't need to necessarily recall from memory what first appears. But to answer these questions, you do need to. So let's look at what some examples you guys did that were good examples. Okay, this is an example done in Poplet. And they did do primary separate from secondary. That's totally okay. But see how they lined them up? So they were giving themselves just another visual. These stages are the same. These stages are the same. So you could have kept it separate like this or combined them, because it's that very first stage that distinguishes primary from secondary. Another example. Here they do the stages. It's not in boxes, but it has the information. Notice it does say that grasses come up, shrubs come up, and gives the reason why. So this is going to be really helpful if they have to apply it to a new situation. So this is another way that you could have done it. Notice more than 3 stages, and it even brings in previous learning, which is excellent. It brings in grasses and shrubs and wildflowers. And it tells what happens. Because as you go, soil builds up. That's why a tree could never be in stage 2. The depth the roots need for soil aren't there yet. So remember, succession, it's a logical progression. Think of it as a healing process that occurs after an environmental change. And the environmental changes are what lead to secondary succession. The only case where it may do primary is in the case of a volcanic eruption, and the lava covers everything, so you're basically starting with bare rock again. But other than that, everything else will begin secondary succession because the soil's there. So I hope this helps you to go back and to fix your succession sequencing flow map.